Good morning, everybody. So I was going to wear my Orioles hat up here, but it's currently at the cleaners after 35 years of tears and being thrown to the ground. So I like to think that I have one of the more exciting jobs at the agency. I get to work with a lot of you, working with a lot of the technology that's coming. But we also need to deliver. So one of the things, the main thing I wanted to talk to you about this morning was what we're doing over the next year as an agency. So we picked 10 areas that we're going to focus on from a technology perspective in the next year. If I can go to the next slide, please. And this one builds. So first click, please. All right, so assured identity. Assured identity is really an umbrella program. And it's us taking another look at how we use the Common Access Card today, right? So that's a point-in-time authentication. You plug the card in, you put in your PIN, and away you go. I could walk away from the machine. Somebody could pick it up. I could hand it off and say, here's my credential and my PIN. And then the user becomes, assumes my identity. What we're looking at with Assured Identity is how we can use both on mobile platforms as well as desktops. How can we continuously monitor the user's activity in the background? Not in a key logging kind of way, but how can we build, a profile of that user's activity and their day-to-day actions? So we've had a few successful prototypes in that area so far. We expect to do some more as time progresses. Next, please. Automation. We have to be more automated in the way that we do things. We have to better leverage not just even scripting, but a lot of the automation capabilities within the data centers to be able to spin up workload and spin down workload on demand. The ability to quickly deliver features and functions. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we progress here. So next, please. Browser isolation. So this was, browser isolation was actually, there were 2 OTAs awarded. They were DISA's first OTAs that were awarded under its authority earlier this year. And the idea behind browser isolation is to take a different look at the way that we defend the DoDN. And by that, I mean we spend a tremendous amount of effort, and we have many boxes that we use to defend the network. The vast majority of the threat comes through the browser, so we wanted to look at a different way that we can do it. So we've taken the browser, moved it out into a commercial provider, and then provide what is effectively a video stream of that activity back to the user. We've rolled it out at this point to all of DISA, and then we've got 8 other mission partners in the queue right now who are testing with the expectation that we're going to roll out to many thousands more over the coming months. And again, this is just to test the technology, and then we'll go from there. Next up, DevSecOps. And so I went a little light on the automation conversation because of DevSecOps. So really, DevSecOps is our methodology, and Stu talked about it a little bit, and you'll hear it a lot more as time goes by. But what we want to do, just beyond the development principles and code development that comes with DevSecOps, we want to take those principles and apply them to the way that we actually deploy infrastructure, right? So a lot of those concepts are consistent. We have consistent types of devices that we use across the agency. Why aren't we starting to treat some of those things as code? Why aren't we treating those configurations as code and then sharing them amongst the program so we can more quickly deploy? So that when it comes time for a reaccreditation, we have a history of configuration. But there's a lot of benefits to not just applying the DevSecOps principles to software development, but also to infrastructure management as well. So we're going to be pushing very hard on that one over the next year. Next there, you see distributed ledgers, and I avoided using the B word, right? I did not use the B word there quite intentionally. I think that we're on the backside of that hype curve on the whole blockchain thing. It is a useful, likely a useful technology. I think it is a useful technology. But we are now currently, we've got a prototype going on right now for blockchain as a service that we're exploring how we can leverage it. But I think we're to the point now where the answer to every IT problem is not blockchain. We're actually finding some useful areas where we can leverage it. Next up, machine learning and AI. Very interested in seeing where this goes. While we don't have a dedicated office to machine learning and AI, we are leveraging ML and AI in a lot of the things that we do. And I think it's a technology enabler more than anything else. We will see it pop up in a number of things. Admiral Norton mentioned the robotic process automation earlier. We are leveraging ML and AI. Our first couple of shared identity projects, we're using machine learning because we were building a model of the user's behavior in the background and constantly validating that model. And if it went out of spec, we were challenging the user again. So ML and AI will play across the board in what we're doing going forward. So next, mobile desktop convergence. This one's pretty interesting from the perspective that the device that you are carrying in your pocket these days is more powerful than the average desktop was just a few years back, right? A lot of the handsets are coming with 12 gigs of RAM, terabyte of storage you can get up to in some of them. But the reality is most users, 95-ish% of their day is spent in office productivity, is spent in web browsing, and other traditional tasks, if you will, that do not stress the machines that we have on our desk today. So the idea is that I could have that mobile device that I'm off working with, come into my office, drop it into a cradle, I get a full desktop experience, pick it up, walk away, and I'm mobile again. Taking it a bit further down the line, we also see the viability of and the potential for a multi-level experience, right? So imagine DMCC. I now have my classified device. I come in, I drop it in. I can have a classified experience as well as potentially an unclassified experience on that same device. And those are the areas that we want to explore around there. SOAR, security, orchestration, automation, and response. Basically automating the SOC type of events. We are very interested in where SOAR is going, and we have a few projects underway where we're going to try to address the SOAR challenge. But our ability, our adversaries are better leveraging automation and ML and AI. We need to get more in the game of automating our response. So we're gonna spend some time on that this year. Wireless transport. You can't turn on the TV half the time now without seeing a 5G commercial, right? So we are very interested in where 5G goes, but specifically, has anybody spent their time, I bet a couple of you have because I know where you're from, but spent your time reading the 5G spec and all the sub-specs underneath of that? I got a few people. There's some really interesting things in the 5G spec. So there's some peer-to-peer capabilities, which I think would be fascinating for us to explore when we're dealing at the tactical edge. There's also network slicing, and we're going to explore how we can leverage network slicing to change the way that we basically ship traffic across the carrier's networks. And then there's the overall speed benefits, and part of those speed benefits are frankly brought on by moving compute to the edge. So working with the carriers to see how we can leverage compute at the edge, basically at the tower level. So we'll be exploring that one over the next year. And finally, zero trust. Okay, so I went to a conference earlier this year, and when I walked the floor, 70% of the vendors, I'd say, had a sign. Now with zero trust, right? We've been doing this for many years, but we've added zero trust, and I frankly got a little jaded by the whole thing because it seemed like everybody was just saying now with zero trust. But the reality is, taking a step back. I would imagine many of you are familiar with the DoD DMZ concept, right? We've all read that. It's well rehearsed. We all know it pretty well. DoD DMZ was really focused on layer 2 type traffic. If you come from the internet, we're going to drop you here. If you come from NIPRNet natively, we're going to drop you here, and we're going to use your PKI credential to log you in. And that's really how we've traditionally done it. If you take the zero trust concepts and apply it against that, now think layers 3 through 7. I'm taking attributes about everything that you've done the machine that you're coming from, the network that you're coming from, the time of day that you're coming from, the credential that you're using. Many of those things, we're taking those and we're using those and applying the zero trust concepts against them. And so we are very interested to where zero trust is going. So we think that we can take many of those concepts, some of them we're already doing, frankly, but we can take many of those concepts and apply it against what we do for the department. So with that, I'd like to further foot stomp something that a couple things that Vice Admiral Norton noted earlier. We want to have very transparent and open conversations with you. Please don't come promising the world. Because everything's always got its challenges. Every one of these technologies that I just talked about, every one of them have their own independent challenges. But we can work through that, and we want to work through that with you. And then the other one is security from the start, right? We don't want to bolt things on later and try to figure out how do we make this work within the security challenges that we currently have. We want to do that from the start, and we are happy to have open conversations with you about how we can do that. So with that, I think we're holding questions till the end. Is that what I heard? Okay.
Actually, Mr. Wallace, you do have a question, and I believe the speakers are taking brief questions.
Okay, let's do it.
And I have one for you. How is DISA streamlining the ATO process to bring all these great capabilities to the fight quicker?
Where's Roger? So actually, I'll give you the DevSecOps example, right? And so DevSecOps in my mind is carrot and stick. And it's more carrot than anything else in that, as I've tried to explain it to folks and why you need to automate more and why you need to get more in line with these types of ways of doing things, is that if you can automate it and you can show in your accreditation package how you got to where you got, how did you get to where you are, the changes that have been made over time, those sorts of things, your accreditation is going to go much easier. It's going to be a far easier process if you can show that, all right, Mr. Greenwell, over the last 3 years, these are all the changes, and this is how we've drifted potentially, or these are, the changes that have been made to the system. And a lot of those DevSecOps principles bring us that. It is continuous ATOs. It is, there are a lot of things in terms of speeding that ATO process up that we can get from that. And RIO is very interested in helping us get there. So I think that's, the leveraging of automation and the leveraging of a lot of the tool sets that are out there to help us stay in continuous compliance will make that ATO process a whole lot better. But it's not going to happen overnight, and it's going to be a process in order to get us there.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace.
All right. Well, thank you all. I hope you enjoy your day, and we'll talk to you later.